All right, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining from. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, and we do have a bunch of people joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world, and of course, now homes around the world. So thank you so much for tuning in on YouTube. This was one of the most heavily signed up for programs we've ever done, so we're looking forward to seeing you all coming in on YouTube. Let me know where you're joining from, and I'll share as many questions as I can at the end. A few quick notes before we dive in with our topic. We are using Slido today, so if you use Slido, I'll type this in the chat bar, just type in SLIDO into Google, use the event code Seahorse. You'll be able to join in, take part in some polls, and share your questions, upvote your favorites there. I encourage you to do that. It'll be a lot easier to find your questions that way. All right, the reason we're all here is we are joined live by Katie McMahon, Manager of Education at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada, as we continue their epic series highlighting all their amazing animals. So today we are going to learn a little about their seahorses. We've been covering epic giant sharks and super turtles and all this stuff. Today we're going a little bit smaller, but equally cool, and I'm so excited to share some seahorses with you guys. Without further ado, thanks for joining us, Katie, and take us away.
Thanks so much, Jesse, and thanks everybody for joining us today. So if you've been to the aquarium, I am currently in the gallery at our seahorse exhibit, and this is the nursery. So these are our juvenile seahorses, which are now about 6 months old. We do have some adults as well. I will take you over there at some point to show them to you, but the nature of their exhibit is that they're a little bit harder to see. So we'll stick mostly with these guys, which are the juveniles. So these are the lined seahorses, or they're also called northern seahorses. And their Latin name, if you're into knowing the scientific name, is Hippocampus erectus. Seahorses belong in the Cygnathid family. So that family includes pipefish and sea dragons, as well as the seahorses. And we do have some of those as well, when we'll try and visit them before we sign off today. Cygnathids, seahorses are indeed fish. They are a very unusual and unique fish, but super, super cool. And I'm going to take you through some of the things that make them really unique fish today, such as that they swim upright, that they have armored plates instead of scales, that they have some really interesting reproductive behaviors and strategies, and they have some really interesting feeding behaviors. And we're going to get to see them have their lunch in a little bit as well. So northern seahorse, or lined seahorse, are an Atlantic species. They live in saltwater, and they actually can be found as far north as off the coast of Nova Scotia. So even in Canada, we do have seahorses. And the southern extreme of their range would be Uruguay down in South America. Their habitat would be primarily fairly shallow water, mangroves, seagrass, or coral kinds of areas. Is their preferred habitat, and that's partly because they're not very good swimmers, as you're probably noticing. They do swim upright as opposed to other fish, and you might be able to just see there the dorsal fin on his back. When they're holding on, their fins are fairly easy to see, but when they're swimming around, their fins move so quickly that they actually turn into a bit of a blur. So let me see if I can find a guy who's swimming here. We can catch. Maybe he'll show off his dorsal fin for us. So on his back there, his dorsal fin is moving about 20 to 30 times per second. So I would kind of compare that to how when a hummingbird is flying, their wings are moving so quickly, they're just a blur that you can barely see them. So those teeny tiny fins are working super, super hard to help the seahorses swim, but they're still not great swimmers. Their strategy is going to be hanging out in grassy habitats, similar to what we have here, and of course, holding on with their tail. Their tail is prehensile, which means it's able to grasp. And so I think of it grasping like a hand, or like a monkey's tail, or even like a giraffe's tongue. Their prehensile tail is able to hang on to squirrel or seaweed so they don't get washed away by strong currents or big waves. Here at the aquarium, we feed them mysis and brine shrimp, and here they come right on cue. So now it's lunchtime for our seahorse friends, so we'll get to watch them eating. So another really interesting thing about seahorses is that they actually don't have any teeth. They use their mouth more like a straw. Let's see if this guy will help us out and show us how he's going to eat his lunch. One cool thing I learned about them too is actually that their eyes move independently from each other. So that's a good thing when you're hanging out in seaweed waiting for your lunch to swim by, that you can look different directions with each eye. Oh, they're still figuring out which thing they want to eat for lunch today.
Yeah.
We'll give them a minute and see if these guys want to eat for us. Anyway, they have no teeth. So they're going to use their mouth like a straw to suck their food in. And that behavior is called snick, which is kind of a funky word to learn about seahorses. How about these guys? Let's see if they'll eat. Oh, yeah, that guy's eating his lunch. There we go. We'll stick with these guys for a second, see if we can watch them. So they also don't have a stomach. So they're pretty much constantly eating throughout the day. A seahorse could eat as many as 3,000 brine shrimp over the course of a day, because they have to pretty much continuously eat to keep their energy up, because they have to be constantly swimming anytime that are not attached to anything. There we go. Yeah, he's showing off us. That's great. What else? So we feed them probably 5 or 6 times throughout the day here at the aquarium. And as I said, it's usually mysis and brine shrimp are their preferred food items here. In the ocean, they would eat similar items, zooplankton, tiny crustaceans, that kind of thing would be their primary food choice. So a little bit about their reproductive behavior. You may have heard before that seahorses, it's actually the father that has the babies. It gives birth to the babies. And that's correct. That's what happens. They have bond pairing. So a seahorse male and seahorse female will bond pair usually for a season, but some species will even pair for life. So they will only mate with one other seahorse. They do quite a elaborate dance behavior where they link tails. They make clicking sounds with their bony plates that cover their bodies. And then eventually the female will deposit her eggs into the male's brood pouch where they're fertilized, and then he will hold on to them for a gestation period of about 21 days. So definitely recommend that you go on YouTube and see if you can find a video of seahorse courtship dance. It's quite interesting to watch how they move with each other and link up. Quite beautiful to watch. So when the female deposits the eggs, it would be somewhere between 250 and 650 eggs that she would deposit into the male's brood pouch. And after that 21 days, he's going to give birth to all of those teeny tiny babies. And when I say teeny tiny, I mean teeny tiny. They're about 11 millimeters when they're born, so super small. And then really they have a little bit of parental care, but mostly they're on their own in the big open ocean. So they got to learn to survive quickly. It will take them about 8 to 10 months to fully mature. And their lifespan ranges from about 1 to 4 years. So they're a fairly short-lived fish. These guys right now, I'd say are maybe range in size from maybe 5 centimeters up to maybe the biggest ones in here, maybe 8, maybe 10 centimeters. Our adults will get to about the maximum size of about 19 centimeters long, but more of an average of around 15 centimeters. So when I picture 15 centimeters in my mind, I think of one of those small school rulers. That kind of length would be the biggest that they would get. If you're wondering about how seahorses are doing in the wild, they are, under the IUCN status, considered vulnerable. So the IUCN is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and they keep a huge database of lots of plants and animals from around the world that are at keeping track of those population data and then classifying them based on how well they're doing. So seahorses are considered vulnerable. There's a few factors affecting the seahorse population. So there's habitat loss, so from development or climate change or real estate development, that kind of thing might affect their habitat off the coasts where they live. Bycatch is a big problem for seahorses, particularly with the shrimp industry. So if you're someone who likes to eat shrimp, and I'm with you, I enjoy eating shrimp as well, it's important to make sure that any shrimp that we buy is caught in a sustainable way. So that would make sure that the boats that are out catching the shrimp are using methods for catching them that don't catch seahorses by accident. Because if seahorses get caught up in the fishing nets for the shrimp boats, they likely won't survive. So that's the process called bycatch. So we work closely with a program called Oceanwise Sustainable Seafood. So you can check out their resources for more information on what kinds of shrimp are good to buy. Or when you're at the grocery store, you can look for things like MSC on the logo. Will tell you that those shrimp were caught in a sustainable way. The third thing affecting the seahorse population in the wild is the aquarium trade. So people think seahorses are really beautiful, and of course they are, and they want to have them in their home aquariums. And so seahorses are being caught and sold for the aquarium trade market. So one of the really important things that we do here at the aquarium, and that we're really proud to do with lots of other zoos and aquariums around the world, is that we breed our own seahorses. So we have had many successful seahorse births here, and that we grow up the seahorses, raise them up to be adults. We do lots of trading with other zoos and aquariums to make sure that we're maintaining our genetic diversity within our population. And in fact, we actually just recently traded some of our seahorses with the Quebec Aquarium, and we received a new species in exchange that is currently undergoing a quarantine and acclimation process, and we hope to have them on exhibit sometime soon. So that's very exciting. So we're not taking any seahorses from the wild for our own collection here. It is self-sustaining, which is excellent. And we probably we're coming up on being open for 7 years. So I would say we've had at least 7 generations, probably more, of seahorses born here at the aquarium. I'll take you over to visit our other signathidds quickly so you can see them as well and compare their body structure. So we'll make our way over to the pipefish. Oh, we're going to head to the sea dragons first. So this is the sea dragon habitat here. Let's see. I checked where they were before we started, but of course they probably have moved around. Oh, here's a great shot of this guy right here. So this is a weedy sea dragon. These guys were born at our aquarium that's in Myrtle Beach. So they are also born under human care, not taken from the ocean. Sea dragons are a bit different in that they do not have a prehensile tail, but they do have very elaborate camouflage, as you can see. So they've got all these super cool sort of appendages that make them really look like seaweed. I've actually overheard people questioning whether they were real animals or not because their camouflage is so cool, and they're very, very beautiful. Their exhibit is a little bit dark. They're very sensitive to light. This is one of the areas of the aquarium where we don't allow flash photography. And these guys get the VIP treatment. They get a black curtain around their exhibit at night to make sure they get complete darkness. We watch very carefully to see how much each one of them is eating. They're definitely a bit of a diva among the aquarium collection here. And then let's see if we can find any of our pipefish. They were doing a great job of camouflaging themselves earlier when I was here. Let's just, where did he go? Oh, I see him. Okay, so in this big patch of grass right at the back, can't get much closer than this, so you're going to have to really look closely. You can see him moving around in the grass there as a pipefish. And it's essentially the same as a seahorse, except his body is very straight, and he also doesn't have a prehensile tail, so he has to be very good at camouflaging. Oh, he's poking his head out to the right a little bit. And then, oh, here's a guy right here pretending to be a piece of grass, hoping that we don't notice him, doing a great job of camouflaging. So you can see his head is a similar shape, just straighter. They don't really have the same sort of elaborate bony plates that the lined seahorses have. In fact, the plate that covers the seahorse's head is kind of like a crown. It's called a coronet, which would be another word for a crown. So we'll make our way back over here. Maybe we'll check out the adult seahorses quickly, see if they're in a spot where we can see them. This curve on this exhibit makes it hard to focus on them. So there's one guy right down there in the coral. Maybe you can see him. He's also doing a great job of hiding. And, oh, one guy up here. Jesse, do you want to switch back to me for a second? There's a guy right here.
Yeah. Very cool.
Just to the left there, just before it turns to the purple stuff.
Yep.
So good at camouflaging. Makes it hard to point them out on camera when I can't point with my finger to show you where they are. Okay, we'll go back to the babies where we can get a good view of them. All right, I'm ready for some questions.
We are getting so many questions already. So over 300 people tuning in on YouTube right now. So a huge thanks to you guys. We've got Massachusetts, Minnesota, Texas, Oregon, Arizona, Wisconsin, BC, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. And those are just the people that have let me know where they're from. So hi to all of you guys. Nice to see some familiar faces as well. We've also got a bunch of live teachers with us and family. So I'm going to go to them first for some questions, and then please do keep sharing your questions on YouTube. Slido will take as many as we can. So I'm going to kick us off with Miss LaCastro, Sophie. If you guys want to join us and kick us off with a question, go for it.
Hi, I have a question for you. It was about the sea dragons, and we're wondering whereabouts we would find those in the world, which oceans they would be in.
Yeah.
Great question. So the sea dragons are more of an Australian species. So Southern Ocean or off the coast of Australia, whereas opposed to these lined seahorses, which we would find off the Atlantic coast.
Awesome. Great start, guys. All right, let me go to Miss Sheard. If you have a question joining us in Keswick, Ontario, you're demuted. Go for it. Oh, there you go.
Hi. Okay. So I have a student, Nicola, who was wondering about the armor, whether it just scares away predators or does it actually protect the seahorses?
Great question, Nicola. It would protect them. So it is like a bony plate. I'm going to try and show you. There's a few, I don't know if it's going to be too dark for you to see these, but there's a static exhibit here, which has some of, I guess, preserved seahorses, for lack of a better word, that kind of show that bony plate structure. So it would definitely protect them a little bit. They'd still be pretty vulnerable to predation. Definitely stingrays, tuna, crabs, that kind of stuff wouldn't have much trouble getting through it, but it does definitely offer them a little bit of protection.
Very cool. All right. Let's take a question from online. So at the Phoenix School in Salem, Massachusetts, and I swear you guys have been in every program in the last 3 weeks, so welcome back. Charlie wants to know, how many babies do they have at a time, Katie?
Could really range, Charlie. So the range would be somewhere between 250 to 650 babies per birthing event. So quite a lot.
Wow, very cool. But this is not something where it's one or two at a time ever. It's always a lot.
Correct. I mean, typical of most fish species, their strategy is to have a lot of babies, and then the babies are on their own for survival, as opposed to a lot of mammals, which will have only one or two babies and spend a lot of time and energy caring for those babies to make sure that they survive.
Excellent. I'm glad we got that message in too. All right, I'm going to go to Mr. Hill, also in Keswick, Ontario. If you have a question for us, just demute your mic and come on up.
All right, thanks, Jesse. Katie, Ryder in grade 6 wants to know if the pipefish and the dragonfish also have male brood pouches, and why do they use that strategy for reproduction?
Great question. They do both have brood pouches. The males do still carry the babies in both the pipefish and the sea dragons. And I honestly don't know how that strategy evolved over time. It's very, very unique on the animal kingdom. Like, think of a pouch like a marsupial. but it's still the female that carries them. So as far as I know, this is the only male animal that has live babies. These guys are having a little wrestling match with their tails here.
Clash of the Titans. I did share in the YouTube chat bar a link to seahorse mating displays, but you can also find seahorse fights online. BBC and Blue Planet 2 has some really cool ones. So check that out. It's savage, two little tiny seahorses fighting each other. All right, thanks, Ellen. Great question. Let's go to Miss Kerr joining us in Belleville. If you want to demute your mic, go for it.
Hi there, it's Miss Kerr. We have a kindergarten class in Belleville, Ontario, and we have Landon with a question about the tail. We know that it's prehensile, it's curved like a monkey's, but what is it that makes it curved, and how does it, like, why is it curled?
Good question. It's definitely the structure of it that allows it to curl. So it's definitely got muscle development, and probably the bony plates are jointed in such a way that they're able to curl and uncurl the tail. And it's just something that it's interesting that it's involved in lots of different animals, but for similar purpose, always for grasping. And it's a super useful strategy for if you're a monkey needing to hang upside down so your hands are free, or a seahorse hanging on so you don't get washed away in the current.
Very cool. Great question, guys. All right, we're going to go to our Texas students in just a minute, live with us on screen. I want to take a question or a couple questions from YouTube first. So Alicia wants to know, what made you get interested in this job, and at what age did you get interested in doing this? We got maybe a future marine biologist educator, Katie. So
yeah, sounds like it. I am definitely an anomaly in the aquarium that I don't have a marine biology background. So I loved animals as a kid. I grew up in Toronto, and my family had a membership to the Toronto Zoo. We used to go there all the time and hang out with the animals, and have had lots of really interesting experiences being a repeat visitor, sort of checking them out week after week. And I was interested in becoming a high school science teacher, and studied biology in university, and went and got my teaching degree. And then I got a summer job back at the Toronto Zoo, and thought that that was really cool, that my job was to teach people about animals and all the cool things that they do. And I thought that this is the right kind of place for me. And that's my whole career has been working in zoos and science centers, and now the aquarium, where I get to teach kids on field trips and summer camps and all kinds of things about all of these amazing animals and why we should care about them.
Fantastic. Well, this is something that we get a question very similar to it a lot. And it seems to be that following your passion, just doing things, whether it's seeking out internships or jobs or volunteer positions, and doing the things that you love, working with people and in roles that you find fascinating, leads to some really cool careers. So I'd encourage our student who asked that, Alicia, to check that out and try that strategy. It seems to work really well. Awesome. All right, let's go to our group in Texas. So I'm not sure which of those two to demute. So I'm going to demute your phone that you've got going on. But hi, our students in Texas. If you guys have any questions, let me know.
Yes, so this is Bryson and Benjamin, and they are homeschooled. I have a question. So we did hear that when the seahorses are born, at first the babies are just out on their own. But we're seeing them in a group setting here. So in the wild, are seahorses kind of solitary, or do they, or do they live in groups?
Yeah, great question.
Good question. Yeah, so they definitely are more of more solitary in the wild than they would be here. We happen to have the ability to feed them, and so there's lots of resources available, so they don't need to space out to be able to find food. But they are also starting to bond pair already, even though these ones are only 6 months old. So you may notice as you observe them that they're sort of the same two hang out together a lot. So they definitely would live in that, at least in a pair. And a bigger group of seahorses, very appropriately, is called a herd. So they can live in larger groups, but probably not quite as many as what we have here.
Great questions, guys. So far, we're just keep sending them in. I'll take as many as I can. Alice wants to know, are the plants in the tank real? And what kind of plants do they hang out in typically?
These plants are not real. We don't have any live plants in the aquarium, and we actually only have one exhibit that has live coral, and that's mostly just from a ease of care perspective. They would in the wild live in mangroves, in seagrass, in sort of seaweedy environments, and then also lots of seahorses would live in coral reef kind of habitats as well.
Nice. All right, Peyton on Slido wants to know, how do you tell the males and the females apart, Katie?
There are ways. So the brood pouch is usually more pronounced in the male, maybe harder to see in the juveniles, but there's definitely some guys in here that have sort of bigger bellies. Those are likely males. The females tend to have a larger dorsal fin. So again, I'm not an expert. I would think the people who were responsible for looking after the seahorses, it's really obvious to them which are the males and the females, and it just comes with practice. But there is definitely morphological differences between the males and females that are fairly easy to spot once you know what you're looking for.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Katie. All right. I love this question. I love the phrasing of it. So Charlie, as a macabre question, he wants to know, do the parents eat their babies like sharks?
They definitely could. Babies are so tiny, and seahorses would be programmed to eat stuff that looked good that was swimming close by, so that the babies would definitely be at risk of being eaten by their parents. And that's another reason partly why they get distributed fairly far and wide once they're born, to get some space. It's also very common in marine animals all aquatic animals, for the babies to be somewhat at risk by being eaten by their parents, especially animals that would lay eggs and probably wouldn't be able to identify their own babies after they hatched. Just an unfortunate part of survival in the ocean.
But great question. I'm glad we got that one in. We're going to take a few more that have just been really popular that tons of people are asking on YouTube before we wrap up. So one of our questions is, how many seahorses are in this tank? I mean, if we want to count, we can, but we know?
I don't know off the top. I meant to ask beforehand and I forgot. I would guess in here, I'm going to say 20. And I think there's probably about 8 of the adult seahorses in the other exhibit. And then we do have more juveniles back behind the scenes still.
Okay, fantastic. Now, the question that we've got the most of any question is, how long do seahorses live? And I know this will differ depending on the species, so maybe just the guys in front of us.
Yeah, so these guys are lifespan is about 1 to 4 years. Here, where we're looking after their every need, probably closer to the 4-year mark, whereas when they're on their own out in the ocean having to find their own food and watch out for predators, probably on the lower end, sort of in the 2-year mark, I would say.
I want to segue off this idea of, in your care, that they're so well taken care of that they would typically live to the longer end of that time scale. So this is something we bring up with zoos and aquariums a lot. You guys have something called AZA or CAZA accreditation. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means for our people joining in at home?
Absolutely. So once every 5 years, we go through a huge application and inspection by the organizations Jesse mentioned, the AZA and CAZA, as we refer to them. And it's an accreditation process to make sure that we are following the highest standards of animal care and also other things as well. So making sure that people who come and visit us are safe, and that our educational programs are appropriate and rich in content, and that we're teaching people about how they can protect animals in the wild and our earth as a whole. And it also allows us the opportunity to do trading. Like I mentioned before, that we're able to trade some of our seahorses with other zoos and aquariums to both maintain genetic diversity and to expand our collection to a variety of different species. And it's really important to us that we're part of those organizations. And it also allows us to really collaborate with them on different projects as well. So like conservation projects in the wild, research, that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. So I encourage people to check that out. This is something we bring up in all our zoo and aquarium programs. Like I said, when you guys are going to zoos or aquariums anywhere in Canada, the US, or the world, look for that accreditation. And that just, again, means that they're the highest standard of animal care. Animals are being taken care of, and they've got a fantastic staff on site. So do that. That'll really help protect animals in the wild by making sure you're going to facilities that have that accreditation. All right, one more sort of scientific question before we wrap up. Gordon wants to know, are they in hot, warm, or cold water in that tank in front of you?
Oh, good question. I believe this is because they're an Atlantic species more on the temperate side. So our warmest exhibits here are usually max out at like 24 Celsius, and our coldest ones are like 10 or 11 degrees Celsius. This is somewhere in between. So I would say probably, I would guess between 18 and 20 Celsius would be what I would guess.
Nice. And for anyone who's at home who might be, especially our American classrooms, 10 degrees Celsius is very, very cold water. You don't ever really want to jump in water that's 10 degrees Celsius because you'll be jumping out as fast as possible. Katie, before we wrap up, there's so many questions, more than we could possibly answer in any one session today. And so where can kids go to learn more about seahorses or what Ripley's Aquarium of Canada does?
Sure. So our website is a great place. We have, with our other two aquariums, which are located in the US, we have a shared site right now called ripleyaquariums.com/at-home, which has lots of activity ideas. And we post the schedule of what's coming up live for that week. We share lots of content on our Facebook page. And definitely going back and looking at previous explore sessions that we've done with you guys for lots of features on different animals where we go in depth and get to see them up close and learn about how they eat and their behavior here at the aquarium.
Amazing. Katie, as always, this has been such a pleasure and so neat to explore some of the amazing animals you guys have, our seahorses today. Before we wrap up and I get everyone to say a big thank you for joining us, I do want to note for everyone tuning in at home that this weekend, Friday through Sunday, we are launching our first ever Global Biodiversity Festival at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So I've just linked this into the chat bar as well. It is globalbiofest.com. We are doing 50 programs in 3 days. You can watch for free, but we're doing it as a fundraiser, all in support of some amazing conservation organizations. So I encourage you to tune in and join us if you can. But with that, thank you so much for everyone for tuning in online and live. I'm going to demute the microphones of all our live families and teachers. And so if you guys could join me in saying a big thank you to Katie for joining us today, go for it. You're all demuted.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome, everyone. We'll see y'all soon. For those joining us on YouTube, we will be doing more programs with Ripley's Aquarium over the next few weeks. So stay tuned and check that out. And for now, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, guys.